I got them this relief they needed, or they're finally protected from their abusive, like to be able to acknowledge the power in what we do when we do something that's good and positive for someone. I think it's an important piece of the experience.
Welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denise Satova. And today I am chatting with someone who knows family law inside and out. But as always, we're here to go beyond the job title. Jill Spielberg, she is a director and a partner in charge of the Matrimonial and Family Law Department at Abrams Fensterman's White Plains office in New York. And she's built a reputation of handling pretty complicated cases using her financial savvy, but also personal touch. But today we're not here to talk about the cases. We're here to talk about her. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I mentioned to you earlier because we truly met just very briefly at one networking event. So a great opportunity for me to get to know you better. So tell me your story. How did you get here?
Well, I am one of those people who always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, even when I was younger,
Wow.
despite my father having been an attorney and trying to convince me otherwise. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I started out of law school representing accountants in malpractice actions. And after I had sort of had my fill, I decided to go into the area of matrimonial and family law. I worked first at a boutique law firm that had 4 or 5 matrimonial attorneys in it. And so I was able to learn from some of my still favorite colleagues about how to be a good and sensible matrimonial lawyer. And in May of 2021, I left and brought my practice to Abrams Fensterman and sort of haven't looked back.
Wow, there's so much packed in there, and you would think, it's a pretty straightforward story. Well, not for me. I'm very curious. So, so you knew you wanted to be a lawyer. So tell me about it. I mean, what's your earliest memory? Were you hooked on certain shows? What was it about that profession that you found so like cool and appealing?
Well, I was around a lot of lawyers and even judges as a kid because of my father having been an attorney. And I have always sort of been drawn to advocacy in one way or another, using words in a persuasive way, and solving problems, I think, is really what it comes down to. And I think in terms of being a lawyer, that's a way that you can really endeavor to help people in a structured way, right? Using words, using advocacy to improve someone's situation. And especially in matrimonial law, like it's a very personal area. The other side of my personality, I think, is one that understands people and relationships. And so I think the combination of those two things sort of naturally led me to this specialty. But I was an LA Law watcher, Law and Order. Now looking back, there's very little that's actually reflective of the real world being a lawyer, but it's entertaining nonetheless. So I think there was also the allure of like the drama, and public speaking has always been something that I've done without much of a challenge. So I think adding them all together, litigation, felt like the right fit for me.
What was so when you got into the matrimonial law and you started, I think you said you represented accountants first, and then you got into the matrimonial law. What was that first experience when you realized, wow, this is not just about assets, dividing property and stuff. We're dealing with human emotions and kids and families. Do you recall, what was that like?
I remember when I first started saying to one of my colleagues and then partners, like, how do you not take this home with you every night? You know, feeling so responsible for every outcome. As we know, anybody who's involved in the court system or the legal system in any way, you know, there's so many variables. You can say all the right things and have the perfect argument and lose, and you can, you know, be unpersuasive and then the judge agrees with you. So, you know, I think the piece of it where the most important thing to my clients are their kids and their money, right? And you're so responsible for how those um, issues are resolved. And I think the hardest part was learning how to separate yourself from the emotional toll that the process takes on clients.
Were you successful doing that, or do you still find yourself bringing part of it home sometimes?
I mean, some, you know, I have the cases that keep me up at night, you know, that you sort of can't stop thinking about. I think that with time, and the colleague that I spoke to said, just one day you're going to wake up and it's going to be easier. I can't tell you how to do it, but, you know, you'll get used to it. And I think learning that what feels like an emergency to somebody else isn't necessarily an emergency, and being able to set those expectations for clients ahead of time so that they understand that when you're the one with the emergency, you know, I'll be paying attention to you, but until then, there's somebody else who has a true emergency, and trying to adjust expectations of clients accordingly.
Now, I understand that you are a child of divorce yourself.
Mhm.
How has that experience, how do you think it shaped you, both, you know, your approach, um, actually your approach to cases, you know, your clients, I should say, and then also your own view on relationships?
That's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, it's loaded. Yeah.
I draw on my own experience as a child of divorce all the time, and I speak honestly with clients about it. Because, you know, our clients come in and they'll say things like, you know, I want to stay in the house for my kids, or my kids have no idea we never fight. And I explain to them, just because you're not fighting does not mean your kids don't know that your marriage is in trouble. And maybe your kids don't want to stay in a house full of bad memories. And, you know, I'm sure they've seen a lot and heard a lot. And, you know, my parents, without airing their dirty laundry, you know, probably could have gotten divorced much sooner. And they stayed together for all the reasons that people stay together. And if you ask me, they should have gotten divorced earlier, you know? So when people come in, they say, you know, I just want to make it through high school for my kids until they go to college. I can say to them, as a kid whose parents did that, that's not always the best approach. And if you decide you need to do it sooner, don't feel like you're, you know, creating any additional issues that aren't necessarily there. And most importantly, like, you want to be role models for your kids. You want to show them what a healthy, good, positive relationship is, so that they can emulate that rather than emulate the bad stuff. And you do that when they're home before they go to college. So, you know, look, we say a lot of things and clients don't listen to
Yeah.
all of them, but I try my best to. I think it causes clients to feel like you're relating to them, which I am, and to validate all their feelings, but to tell them that there's another way to look at it. And if they have to do it in a different order, that their kids will be fine, hopefully.
That's a great perspective. You're normalizing it for them. And it's actually, it resonates with me because my mom divorced my dad when I was like 4 years old. And she has, so obviously didn't have the memory before then, but oh my gosh, she's carried this resentment. I mean, she's in her 70s and she's still carrying it. It's like, so I know I do remember even post, you know, the divorce, as they try to co-parent it. Now that was in Eastern Europe. There was just so much tension. They probably should have done it even earlier. But yeah, it was, I just being brutally honest. And yeah, have you even asked your kids what, you know, how they're doing? And instead of trying to hide from them what they probably know, or
Right.
wondering about. I think there is nothing more traumatic for a child when they're just sitting in this uncertainty, wondering, is this me? Did I cause this? What's going on? Thank you for
100.
sharing.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to clients about that, most of my clients who have kids, their big concern is, how do I make my kids okay, right? How do my kids come through this unscathed? And what I always say is that the trick is, as hard as it may be for you, you know, supporting their relationship with the other parent, because if you are constantly negative and criticizing and saying how terrible their other parent is, kids are taught from a very young age, you know, people are half of one biological parent and half of the other. And so if you're saying how terrible one of the parents is, and that makes them feel like half of them
Yep.
is all the bad things that you're saying about my other parent. And so of the kids that I've seen that have been, well-adjusted, high-functioning children of divorce, it has always been a result of both parents encouraging their relationship with the other parent. So, not grilling them when they get home, not torturing them about spending time with a new boyfriend or girlfriend, not making them feel bad about having a holiday with one parent or the other parent, and sort of having the theme be more people to love you, as opposed to, making them feel guilty about having that relationship. Because when you grow up and they become adults, they'll remember who they felt comfortable being with. They'll remember who they had to, bend the truth to or keep a story from. And so it's the best advice we can give. It's much easier said than done. And I know that from experience.
Gosh, you can talk about it for so long. Yeah, there's so much wisdom. I love what you said. I actually used that during one of my interviews. Is yeah, when you say about, to a child about, I don't know, their dad being a, no good SOB. I mean, what does it make him feel like? You're right. It's just like, I'm part of him. What does that make me? Now I'm not going to let you skate out of this one. What about has that shaped your views on relationship personally?
Absolutely. I think that I think any relationship that we're a part of has an effect on how we see our own relationships. And I do really believe that as parents, we set the stage for kids, and our lot in life is to model good behavior, good manners, how to treat people, being respectful, and how to be a loving partner in a relationship. And even though my parents got divorced, there were lots of good times and good memories. And so I try to take from those the positive. I think that we all have things about our parents we emulate and things about our parents we promise we'll never emulate. So I look at it the same way when I think about their marriage. There were good things. They were partners in a lot of ways. And then there was behavior by both of them that I hope that I don't exhibit. But, nobody's perfect. And I think that if we, look at any of the relationships around us, our friends' marriages, our own relationships or past relationships, we try and take the good with us and leave the bad behind, and you have enough good. And no relationship's ever perfect, because everybody brings baggage to every relationship. So if you can try and take the good lessons from every relationship that you see and that you're a part of or close to, then you'll be better off.
Mm. What would you do if you couldn't practice law?
Such a good question. I think that I am very involved both of my kids have special needs to one extent or another, and I'm very involved in that world with them, on behalf of them, with them, for them. So I probably would do something in that regard. Maybe, I'm fascinated by all the different educational options and interventions, and something like that, or maybe some sort of a therapist role, because I tend to play that role in every area of my life anyway. So I'd probably tend towards something like that.
You must have so much resilience.
I always say we're all horizontal on someone's couch at some point, talking about, blaming our parents
Yeah.
or whatever else. So I think that I try to focus on the good stuff,
Mm.
celebrate the good things, focus on the good things. There's always going to be bad, but I've never seen somebody who focused on the negativity be uber successful. So
No, and probably not in your circle. You That's not, I don't see someone like that being even attracted to person like you. I think people look, for many years I carried sort of that story, and then I realized through work that was just the story. And then you can rewrite that story. You can choose to remain in a victimhood or just basically write a new story. Yeah, I am allergic to, the complaints and what's wrong and constant, as opposed to gratitude and finding, the positive things, even when life is tough. And you certainly know about that.
I do. I do. And I say the same thing to my kids. Unfortunately for them, they faced a lot of adversity at a very young age. They lost their father when they were young. And, they are super positive kids. They acknowledge that they had this horrible thing happen to them. And it made them who they are in a lot of ways, both good and bad. Um, but again, I think that if you can focus on the positives, to the extent there are any, or what you learned when he was alive, what you learned from him, or what traits you have from him that make you who you are. We could spend all day talking about how horrible it is for a 6 and a 9-year-old to lose their dad, two boys, but instead we try to repurpose the experience to make us better people and better to each other. It's not always easy, believe me, but as long as you're
No.
trying, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, it's incredible. What wow. What do weekends look like in your house?
Oh, so one of my younger child is a very busy athlete. He, 1, 2, 3, 4 teams aren't enough. One or two sports isn't enough. So I can usually be found in a gym or on a field somewhere, and not because I'm working out or playing the sport myself. Um, and it's, I try, you can't be everywhere. So I try and give them each their attention in the ways that they want or need, but they're hectic. I'm running around a lot. So, but my kids are cool in the sense that they know I've got to work on the weekend sometimes. And I'll say, when they were younger, they're old enough now that they can stay home or go to friends or whatever. But I used to have to bring them to the office. I'd say, come on, guys, we got to go, and on a Saturday or Sunday, and one of them would be complaining, and the other would say, do you like your iPad? Do you like the things mom buys us? What do you think? Where do you think that money comes from? Come on, we got to go.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's life lessons that they're learning the hard way, but they're good lessons to have. But the weekends are busy. There's no question.
I mean, you've been through quite a bit, and even on your career journey. What do you think, divorce attorneys really, they don't have, that people don't on the outside really don't understand. And I say this over and over because it's true. They don't understand the many layers that you have to wear, and again, not just as a lawyer, as an attorney, knowing about the asset division and the law and all that stuff, but it's the human stuff. And because you're like a sponge, you absorb you know, other issues, and the decisions that are being made will impact them for the rest of their lives, as you personally know. And then you have to come home and be a mom and hold it all together. And I'm wondering, what do you think that it would take, for sort of the paradigm to start shifting, where people feel like, hey, my lawyer was really great. And so there's a sort of a newly, like, a found respect for the profession. Um,
Yeah. I think that what I try to do is, relate to the clients. Like, I guess I was saying this before. I say to them, look, I had this experience with my kid, or, maybe say it like this, and that might be easier for them to hear. Or, um, you know, what we try to do as attorneys, other than guide our clients through the legal piece of it, is, sometimes you're so surprised that somebody doesn't realize that saying that to your kid is like not okay,
Yeah.
Well, all I did was say, of course your dad's a deadbeat. He doesn't pay for any of the bills. Like, yeah, so we don't say that to our children. And you don't want to say it in a condescending way, right? Because I
Right.
think that most people, if they knew that what they were saying was detrimental to their children, they wouldn't say it.
Mm.
Um, but you have to give them a way. It's almost like an education of thinking about things a little bit differently, right? Like,
Right.
how's your kid experiencing that comment? How can you best, you know, keep this piece of the story from your child? And people are worried in divorces, they're worried about how they'll be perceived, how their kids will, whether they'll want to be with them, not be with them, how will they look back on this time and have experienced it. So I think that the key is to try and help your clients survive, right? Survive the experience.
Mhm.
What do they really care about? Do they care about what the arithmetic is, or do they care about being able to pay the doctor's copay when they get to the doctor? Do they care about whether it's 40% or 60% or 51% of custody? They just want to be with their kids and enjoy their time with their children, right? So trying to step back from the technicality and talk to them about the experience more is part of what I try to do to make it an easier experience for them.
I had intentionally asked you this question. That's really for people to gain appreciation for the thought process and where you're coming from as a human being, and really being vulnerable, and sort of almost like you leaning into the conflict, being able to meet them wherever your client is at that time, because they're in this whole, um, there's a feeling of shame, and that breeds anger.
Mhm.
So that's really pretty amazing. It's really hard work. Um, if you were to give advice to incoming attorneys, what would that be?
Make sure you're getting into an area that you actually enjoy. I say this to people all the time. We spend the most waking time of our lives at work. Work with people you like, do something you enjoy. That's not to say it's not going to be hard or challenging, or there are going to be bad days or days you dread or days that make you nervous, or, but somebody once said something very, it resonated with me as it relates to working parents, right?
Yeah.
If you go home and you complain about work all the time and how much you don't want to be there, but then you leave your kids every day to spend time there, it sends a message to them like, you'd rather be in this place that you hate than spend time with me. And so I think
Mm.
that, aside from communicating to your children that you like what you do, to actually like it, right? It's easier to tell the truth than to lie. So, I'll come home and there'll be a rough day, and my kids will say, like, you work so hard. Do you really want to be working this hard? And I say, but guess what happened? Guess what I did for somebody today? Yes, it was exhausting. Yes, it was hard, but I got them this relief they needed, or they're finally protected from their abusive, like to be able to acknowledge the power in what we do when we do something that's good and positive for someone. I think it's an important piece of the experience, because we can be uncomfortable with the topics, and we can feel like, is this really the right, am I making something better for someone, or is this just all sort of a mess? And so I think uh, that's the best advice I could give, is to, if you're going to be a lawyer, do something that interests you and that you'll enjoy, whatever that is.
That's a great advice. Yeah, because it's more than a job. And this is not an area that you want to dislike or hate. Yes, it may be weighing on you, maybe frustrating and tiring, but you're handling someone's future. So you better, at least underneath all that, I mean, if you've been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years, yeah, you have a right to be exhausted, but that's nothing to do with just hating it, not liking it. Um, that is really great advice. Any we can talk forever. And any parting thoughts that you'd like to, any passion projects that you're into, or any events you have coming up you'd like to share?
I think that, I mean, as far as parting thoughts is concerned, I think that, trying to find, I've been saying a lot, like celebrating the good things. There's as we get older and older, people don't want to celebrate their birthdays anymore. There's so few good things and good, positive events in our lives, that to focus on trying to celebrate the good stuff. There's plenty of bad stuff and you'll have plenty of time to worry about that stuff even when it comes. But taking time out to celebrate your personal achievements, your professional achievements, your children's achievements, the littlest things, getting 100 on a spelling test, like that's a big deal. And that's a big deal for them. And it'll balance out when they get a 70 in some other top subject or some other word list, just trying to be, I think that that's what makes life generally more positive, right? Like highlighting the good stuff so that you can bear the bad stuff, right? So that there's enough positivity to cushion whatever tragedy or rough time that you might experience.
You saved the best for last. I mean, that is so great. So celebrate more of the positive stuff so that it balances out when there is the tough stuff. And that, what an excellent way to look at it, because I think as human beings, we're programmed for battle, for
Yeah,
combat and to defend ourselves. And sometimes all it takes is like, yeah, this really sucks and I'm not feeling it, but I'm still gonna crack the smile and
yeah.
yeah, I guess it's not that bad. And
The
just
dark
like,
humor, it's what gets us through.
yep,
Surround
yep.
yourself with good people, and people that see the world the same way that you do, and laugh instead of crying if you can. And that's how we just have to put one foot in front of the other, and tomorrow's a new day. Sort of
Wow,
how
yep.
we live in my house.
Love it. Love it. Jill, thank you so much for sharing your
So
story, inside. And there's just so much there. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate being here. Thank you again.
And for our viewers and listeners, to find out how to get a hold of Jill Spielberg, make sure that you click on the bio link below. And our viewers, listeners, make sure that you follow us on Beyond the Bar Podcast YouTube channel, all the social media channels. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.